Dear students, today's class is on the paranasal sinuses. At the end of this presentation, all of you must be able to enlist the names of the paranasal sinuses, and it is also expected that you will be able to say the site of opening of individual paranasal sinuses in the nasal cavity. You must also be able to enumerate the functions of the paranasal sinuses, and you should also be able to illustrate each individual paranasal sinuses by their blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatic drainage, etc. And also you must be able to explain the diseases that occur in relation to the paranasal sinuses. So the paranasal sinuses, they are air-filled extensions of the respiratory part of the nasal cavity into the adjacent bones, which are the frontal, ethmoidal, sphenoidal and maxillary. So paranasal means these are air-filled cavities which are found around the nasal cavity. That's why they are called the paranasal sinuses. All the paranasal sinuses, they are lined by ciliated columnar epithelium, and as I have said, all of them communicate with the nasal cavity by small openings or ostium. Now in the diagram, I hope you can identify the paranasal sinuses located around the nose, which is the blue colored part is the nose. So you can see the frontal sinuses at the top, triangular sinuses at the top, and on either side of the nasal cavity you can see the maxillary sinuses. They are also two in number, and we have got ethmoidal sinuses on either side of the midline, and it is at the roof of the nasal cavity, as you can see, and behind the ethmoidal sinuses we have the two sphenoidal air sinuses located in the body of the sphenoid bone. So this means we have four pairs of paranasal sinuses, and according to their location, on which bone they are located, they are the frontal air sinus, maxillary air sinus, sphenoidal air sinus and ethmoidal air sinus. Remember, the mucus secreted by the glands in the mucous membrane that line the paranasal sinuses is swept into the nose through the openings in the sinuses by the movement of cilia covering the mucous membrane. This is how the secretions of the paranasal sinuses is drained into the nasal cavity, and from there it is drained outside. Galen made the first known descriptions about the adult maxillary sinus, and in 1651 it was Nathaniel Highmore who first described in detail the morphology of maxillary sinus and gave the idea of pneumatization of the sinuses. Therefore, the maxillary sinus, it is also referred to as the antrum of Highmore. Now coming to the development of the paranasal sinuses, the paranasal sinuses, they develop as outgrowths from the lateral wall of the nasal cavities, and they extend into the surrounding bones, which are the maxilla, ethmoid, frontal and sphenoid. The sinuses, they reach their maximum size during puberty. Remember, only the maxillary and ethmoidal air sinuses, they are present at birth, and the other sinuses, they develop at a later stage. The size of the paranasal sinuses increases until late adulthood due to atrophy and resorption of the parent bone. As for the functions of the paranasal sinuses, they act as air conditioning chambers, that is, they regulate the temperature of the inspired air. and also add humidity to it. The sinuses also add resonance to the voice. They lighten the weight of the skull bones. They also secrete mucus, and their enlargement till puberty contribute to the definitive shape of the face. That means if you look at the face of a baby, that is not the final shape. So at puberty, the final adult shape of the face is taken. Now let us see the paranasal sinuses one by one. First, the frontal air sinus. So the frontal air sinus, I hope you can identify the frontal air sinus, yes, over the eyebrows. So the frontal air sinus, they are rudimentary at birth and they appear during the second year of life, and they reach their full size only after puberty. As seen in the picture, they are two in number and they are roughly triangular in shape, and each of them are separated from each other by a bony septum in the midline. And they are situated behind the superciliary arches of the frontal bone between the two tables. As for the measurements, their average measurements are: height is approximately 3.15 centimeter, width is approximately 2.5 centimeter, and depth is 1.8 centimeter. And as seen in the picture, the frontal air sinus, they grow upward at an extremely variable rate until puberty. I told you all the paranasal sinuses, they drain into the nasal cavity through a ostium. So the frontal air sinus, they communicate or they open in the middle meatus of the nose by a passage called the frontonasal canal, which is just in front of the hiatus semilunaris, if you can remember from my last class. As for the relations of the frontal air sinus, superiorly it is related to the anterior cranial fossa with its contents. Inferiorly it is related to the orbit, anterior ethmoidal sinuses and the nasal cavity. Anteriorly it is related to the superciliary arches of the frontal bone. Posteriorly, it will be related to the anterior cranial fossa with the contents again, and medially, it is related to the bony septum between the two frontal sinuses. The frontal air sinuses, they are supplied by the supraorbital and supratrochlear arteries, which are branches of the ophthalmic artery, and the venous drainage, the veins, they drain into the anastomotic vein connecting the supraorbital with superior ophthalmic veins. And as for the innervation of the frontal sinus, they are supplied by supraorbital and supratrochlear nerves, which are branches of the ophthalmic nerve, and limbs from the frontal air sinus, they drain into the submandibular lymph nodes. Now let's see the sphenoidal air sinus. As you can see in the diagram, the sphenoidal air sinus, they are two large irregular cavities enclosed in the body of the sphenoid, and both of them, they are separated from each other by an irregular septum. The sphenoidal air sinus, their approximate measurements are: height is approximately 2 cm, breadth is approximately 1.8 cm, and depth is approximately 2 cm. Each of the sphenoidal air sinus, They drain into the sphenoethmoidal recess that lie above the superior concha of the nose, which these openings of the sinuses, they have been explained in my last class. For the relations of the sphenoidal air sinus, you look at the picture again. Superiorly, it is related to the optic chiasma, the hypophyseal fossa containing the pituitary gland. Inferiorly, it is related to the nasopharynx and the pterygoid canal. Medially, it is related to the other sphenoidal air sinus, and laterally, it is related to the cavernous sinus with the structures that pass through it. As for the blood supply of the sphenoidal air sinus, it is supplied by the posterior ethmoidal artery and nasal branches of the sphenopalatine artery. And innervation of the sphenoidal air sinus, the nerve, they come from the posterior ethmoidal nerves and orbital branches of the pterygopalatine ganglion. And lymph from the sphenoidal air sinus, they drain into the rectopharyngeal lymph nodes. Now, before I explain the ethmoidal air sinuses, let me tell you about the ethmoid bone first. So, look at the picture. You can see the ethmoid, the posterior picture, the posterior diagram. It is the ethmoid bone, and the anterior three parts you can see. This is the ethmoid bone shown in separate parts. So the ethmoid bone, as you know, it lies in the anterior part of the base of the skull within the ethmoid notch of the frontal bone. If you remember the frontal bone, you must have seen that between the two orbital plates there was the ethmoid notch where the ethmoid bone articulates. So it is cuboidal in overall shape, and it contributes to the formation of the roof, lateral wall, medial wall of both the nasal cavities, and also floor of the anterior cranial fossa. The ethmoid bone, it consists of two rectangular box-shaped ethmoidal labyrinth, one on each side, and this labyrinth contains the ethmoidal air cells. Both the labyrinths, they are united superiorly across the midline by a perforated sheet of bone which is called the cribriform plate of ethmoid. A second sheet of bone which is called the perpendicular plate of ethmoid, it descends vertically in the median sagittal plane to form part of the nasal septum. So in our last class, we did discuss about the formation of the nasal septum, where I said the posterior superior part is formed by the perpendicular plate of ethmoid. So this is the perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone. So these are the different parts of the ethmoid bone, and just remember the ethmoidal air cells, they will be lying within the labyrinth of the ethmoid. Now coming to the ethmoidal air sinus, so these are thin-walled bony honeycomb spaces that collectively form the ethmoidal labyrinth. I have already said this. So they are located between the orbit and the nasal cavities. Just watch in the diagram so you can identify the ethmoidal air cells in between the orbit and the nasal cavities. The ethmoidal air cells, they are divided into anterior, middle and posterior groups based on the location of their apertures on the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. So as for the relations of the ethmoidal air sinus, superiorly it is related to the anterior cranial fossa and its contents frontal bone with the sinus. So if you look at the diagram, the green portion, it is representing the ethmoidal air sinus. So you try to relate the ethmoidal air sinus, its superior, medial, lateral, all these relations. I think it will be easier to understand. So superiorly, it is related to the anterior cranial fossa and its content, the frontal bone with the sinus, as you can see. Medially, it is related to the nasal cavity. So it is the upper part of the nasal cavity, as you can see. Laterally, it is related to the orbit on its side. As for the location of openings of the ethmoidal air sinuses, the anterior ethmoidal air sinus, it opens into the infundibulum of the frontonasal duct in the middle meatus of the nose. So its opening is just below the opening of the frontal air sinus. The middle ethmoidal air sinus opens into the ethmoidal bulla or just above it in the middle meatus of the nose. I told you the ethmoidal bulla, it is formed by the middle ethmoidal air cells. So just above the bulla, it opens, the middle ethmoidal air cells, they open. And the posterior ethmoidal air sinus, it opens into the lateral wall of the superior meatus of the nose. The blood supply of the ethmoidal air sinus, it comes through the branches of anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries which arise from the ophthalmic artery, and as for the innervation, it is supplied by posterior and anterior branches of nasociliary nerve from the ophthalmic nerve and by orbital branches arising from the pterygopalatine ganglion. So, having completed the other sinuses, let us now see the maxillary air sinus. Remember, the maxillary air sinus, this is the largest of all the paranasal sinuses. As you can see in the diagram, you can identify the frontal sinus. The green ones are the ethmoidal air sinus on either side, and the below one, the triangular one at the level of the maxilla, that is the maxillary air sinus. So I have already told you the maxillary sinus, they are also referred to as the antrum of Highmore. So the maxillary sinuses, they completely fill the bodies of the maxilla, and they are pyramidal in shape, and so they will present with an apex, base, then 4 surfaces. As for the base of the maxillary sinus, just look at the diagram. The base is formed by lateral wall of the nasal cavity, so that is the base. So if that is the base, the apex, it would be the apex of the maxillary sinus, it is directed laterally towards the zygomatic process of maxilla. The superior surface or roof of the maxillary air sinus, it is formed by the inferior orbital margin and the floor of the orbit, and the floor of the maxillary sinus, it is formed by the alveolar process of maxilla. The anterior wall, it is formed by the infratemporal vessels and muscles of the upper lip, and the posterior wall of the maxillary air sinus, it is related to the infratemporal fossa as well as the pterygopalatine fossa. And the approximate measurements of the maxillary sinus, they are, its height is approximately 3.5 centimeter, width is approximately 2.5 centimeter, and depth is approximately 3.2 centimeter. The relations of the maxillary air sinus, the superolateral surface, that is the roof, it is related above to the orbit. Anterolateral surface is related below to the roots of the upper molar and premolar tooth, and the posterior wall it is related behind to the infratemporal fossa. Now what is maxillary hiatus? Maxillary hiatus is the large irregular opening of the maxillary air sinus in the upper and posterior part of the nasal surface of the body of maxilla. You can see the maxillary hiatus when you study the individual maxilla bone, but remember in an articulated skull the hiatus is size of the hiatus is much reduced due to articulation of the various bones in an articulated skull. The blood supply of the maxillary sinus comes from branches of facial artery, maxillary artery, infraorbital and greater palatine arteries. And the veins from the maxillary sinus, they accompany the arteries and drain into anterior facial vein and pterygoid venous plexus. And the nerves supplying the maxillary air sinus comes from infraorbital nerve, middle and posterior superior alveolar nerves, and anterior palatine nerve. And lymph from the maxillary air sinus drain into the submandibular lymph nodes. This is a chart showing the status of various paranasal sinuses. As it can be seen here also, the maxillary sinus and the ethmoidal sinuses are the ones which are present at birth, and the others they develop at a later stage. And we can see from here that all the sinuses they reach their adult size by puberty. Now coming to the applied anatomy. In X-rays, the normal sinuses they appear translucent. Translucence means they will be as they contain air, they will appear darker. In the first X-ray, I hope you can identify the maxillary air sinuses. You can see the oral cavity, then above that these are the two maxillary sinuses on either side of the nasal cavity. You can identify the orbit, I suppose, and above the orbit these are the two frontal air sinuses. So normally the paranasal sinuses they appear translucent because they contain air. But following disease, if the person is having sinusitis, the sinuses they show varying degrees of opacity due to accumulation of pus. Now you look at the second X-ray, you will see one of the maxillary sinus it appears opaque. So this is the difference: normal sinus and sinus with sinusitis. Now all the paranasal sinuses they can be infected from the nasal cavity. I hope you will agree. Why? Because all the sinuses they open into the nasal cavity. So as they communicate with the nasal cavity, there is every chance that any infection from the nasal cavity will spread into the paranasal sinuses. But in addition, the maxillary sinus it can be infected from any infection of the teeth also, teeth of the upper jaw I mean. So as you can see in the picture, the floor of the maxillary sinus is related to the roots of the teeth. So if there is any infection, any tooth abscess or any caries in the teeth, so it can easily spread into the maxillary sinus and cause infection of the maxillary sinus. So infections of the sinus, all of you know, it is called sinusitis. and pus formation in the paranasal sinuses following sinusitis is a frequent occurrence. It is interesting that due to the level of location of their ostium, pus from the frontal and anterior ethmoidal sinuses can easily pass into the maxillary sinus. Why? Because the ostium of the maxillary sinus is at a lower level. Just try to identify the ostium of the frontal sinus, anterior ethmoidal sinus, and the maxillary sinus in the hiatus semilunaris. So you see the maxillary sinus opening is the lowest. So this explains why maxillary sinus acts as a reservoir of pus discharged from other sinuses. By other sinuses, I mean the frontal and the anterior ethmoidal air sinus. So maxillary sinus is commonly affected in sinusitis. It is the maxillary sinus which is most commonly affected. So maxillary sinus is the site of chronic sinusitis which results in a loss of cilia over the surface of mucosa, hampering its drainage. I told you earlier that the cilia on the mucous membrane, they help to carry the secretions of the paranasal sinuses towards the nasal cavity for drainage. Now if the cilia is lost, so there won't be any drainage of the secretions of the sinuses, isn't it? So this calls for surgical drainage, as natural drainage of the sinus is difficult because the ostium of the maxillary sinus lies at a higher level than its floor. You just look at the diagram, you will understand. So you know that maxillary sinus opens in the middle meatus of the nose, not in the inferior meatus. Had the opening was in inferior meatus, then there would have been no problem in the drainage of the secretions from the maxillary sinus. But because the floor of the maxillary sinus is at a lower level than its opening, so drainage becomes difficult as a result of loss of cilia due to chronic sinusitis. Now, surgical drainage is carried out by puncturing the lateral wall of the inferior meatus of the nose. You look at the diagram, you can see the syringe. The syringe, it is entering the maxillary sinus through the inferior meatus of the nose. So this is one procedure for surgical drainage, or drainage can also be carried out through an opening made in the canine fossa or anterior surface of the maxilla by a procedure called Caldwell-Luck surgery. Pain of the maxillary sinusitis may be referred to the upper teeth and skin over the maxilla as they are supplied by the maxillary nerve. I am sure many of you have experienced that with maxillary sinusitis, we often have pain in the teeth of the upper jaw. The ethmoidal sinuses, they are separated from the orbital cavity by very thin orbital plates of ethmoid bones. So, any infection of the ethmoidal sinuses may spread into the orbit and produce orbital cellulitis. Moreover, pain of the ethmoidal sinusitis may be referred to the forehead, as both are supplied by ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Now coming to maxillary tumors. Tumor, you know, means any swelling. So maxillary tumors, remember among all the paranasal sinuses, tumors usually occur in the maxillary air sinus. So these maxillary tumors, they arise from the mucosal lining of the sinus. Now due to the thinness of its walls, Any benign or cancerous tumor growing from the maxillary sinus may encroach upon the adjacent parts. So it may do any of the following. Number one, it may, you look at the diagram below, you look at the black arrows and try to follow whatever I am saying. So such a tumor may push up the floor of the orbit and displace the eyeball, causing proptosis and diplopia. Or the tumor may invade the floor and produce a swelling or even ulceration of the palate. The tumor may project medially into the nasal cavity and cause nasal obstruction, epistaxis and epiphora. Epiphora means overflow of the tear, and it will occur because if the tumor goes medially, it will block the nasolacrimal duct, which normally drains the tear fluid. So that is why it will result in epiphora also. Or the tumor, it may protrude anteriorly on the cheek, producing a swelling. So the lady in the picture, so the tumor, it is growing anteriorly into the cheek, and so we can see a swelling. So this is all about the paranasal sinuses. Thank you.